Well, Dave, welcome to our interview. I appreciate you taking the time to talk today. My first question for you is the GPSMAP 9000 is Garmin's first flagships level MFD refit in 8 years. Could you start our conversation by talking about what made this a good time for Garmin to do this refresh?
It's when the technology is ready. So we've been working on this a little while, and this was the prime time to come out with our new flagship 9000.
I mean, I realize that an MFD can go on a lot of yachts, but when you guys created this, what was the target yacht or target customer that you had in mind for this device?
So, we came out with the 8000, is over 10 years ago now, and then the 8600 series. The overarching theme was bigger, just like TVs in your house, everybody wants bigger. And so that's one problem to solve. So we wanted to solve that with the 9000, but again, resolution and performance. So the products we have on the market today, prior to the 9000, they're still top performers and still have enough horsepower left to run and take on the future. But where does it go from there? And so when we looked at the size issue of people on larger screens, the integration with third-party companies and video and cameras, how do we solve that problem? And the 9000 did that. So we looked at larger screens and higher performance.
So you mentioned resolution a minute ago. All of the 9000 series boast 4K screens and high-res sonar imagery. Could you talk to us about how important high-definition imagery is for navigation and also how important it is for finding fish?
Absolutely. So, 4K is, has been a buzz term in our lives for seems like decades now, but we relate it to TVs. Well, how does that correlate to the marine market? Well, looking at nav aids on your charts, there's so many nav aids now. It seems like we mark everything. Well, you get a certain zoom level, those get really blurry or they stack on top of each other. And when you're navigating, that could potentially be dangerous. So those extra pixels, that higher resolution will allow you to get a cleaner picture of what that chart actually looks like. So we look at it from a safety standpoint, and not only that, but it's more visually appealing when you look at it, easier to interpret. And then take that to sonar, fish targets are what everybody's looking for. Well, the difference could be, you could see several fish stacked up, or it could be just bait fish, but you can distinguish that a lot better with the resolution. When you look at our live sonar, our customers are trying to get the highest resolution screen that they can get so they can distinguish those fish targets from non-fish targets.
So with the bigger screen size, are you finding that people are doing sort of a one-to-one replacement, or are they, how does this work? If somebody had multiple screens, are they replacing, 3 screens with 1 screen, or are they keeping 3 screens, just each of them got a lot bigger?
It's a little bit of both. So again, a larger vessel, we have plenty of real estate. It's more of a one-to-one. So if they had 3 screens before, they're going 3 larger screens. And the builders are making the real estate available to accommodate these larger screens also. And then we're also seeing smaller boats where they traditionally have maybe 2 12-inch displays. They're going with a 19 or 22 or even bigger. I mean, we've seen bay boats now with a 27-inch display on it. So who would ever thought that would happen? But it's happening in the real world today.
Nice. So if we were to sort of transition from the glass of the display to the guts of the thing, the new 9000 series have 7 times the processing power of the old 8600 series flagship display. Are users going to see a big difference in processing power if they were coming from an 8600 to a 9000? Is it going to be a big jump there?
So if you've played with them, there's 0 lag time. And if you've played with an 8600, there's very minimal, if any, lag time at all. So that's where, our 8600 series is still available today. It's still plenty powerful for the average customer. But where we have to do is we have to future-proof it, because as you mentioned, it's been quite a long time since our latest flagship product. So it'll be quite some time before we supersede the 9000. So in order to accomplish that and keep the products relevant, we have to overbuild. And, Garmin, we overbuild everything because we want that customer to feel confident that this is not going to be obsolete in a year or 2 years. So the performance, while you may not realize it by just running your finger over the screen or looking at charts, you can't bog it down. But where it will really shine is as the boat's systems get more complex and you add more cameras or integration into it, whether it be underwater lights or sound systems, all that, that's where it really starts to bog down. And the 9000 is so robust that you can pretty much build the most complex system that you want, and it'll be fine.
So if we were talking in very sort of general ballpark percentages here, what percentage of the processing power is reserved for this future proofing or over the horizon sensors, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it'd be hard to quantify that, just because, Garmin's proprietary, the user interface is proprietary, the background infrastructure, architecture, everything is Garmin. It's not based on anything else. So it's probably more, or I say less dependent on processing power than some of the other things, because we build it to our specs and exactly what we need it to do. So there's not a lot of fluff built in, so to speak. But where, again, to get further in the weeds, content protection with HDCP and video, that is one of the biggest trends right now. So you can have multiple screens and you can share Netflix across a network. And currently today, this is the only system that can do that. And so that takes a lot of processing power. And then as you add more thermal cameras or security cameras, that takes a lot of processing power. So right now, that's what we're aiming to solve those problems.
So, I spent a little time digging into the specs on the 9000 series. And, of course, the MFD is solid, no question. But the thing that kind of caught my eye more than anything else really was the BlueNet gigabit network. Would I be correct in sort of eyeing this is really the change agent on this MFD?
It is. I mean, don't get me wrong. The size, the 4K, that's all beautiful. They're phenomenal displays, but really the groundbreaking, infrastructure behind it is the BlueNet, and that's what's going to allow the network or the system on the vessel to fully utilize the processing power that is available, because the current system architecture we've had has been around for well over 20 years, and so. I joke one of the longest running products at Garmin is our GMS10, which is just a network switch. We still sell it today. It's well over 20 years old. If you see one, it has the original Garmin logo on it from when we started. So that's obviously becoming antiquated. So how do we accommodate what the customer's expectations are with the technology available? And the only way to do that was build it from a ground up, which is BlueNet.
Is it possible to get some sort of a comparison, even if it's very general ballpark terms, between what BlueNet delivers and what Garmin's previous generation network could deliver, as well as Ethernet, which I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with?
Yeah, it's round numbers. It's roughly 10 times faster. Again, it's a network traffic. The GNS10 that we've had now for again several decades. It was getting to the max. And so you would find times where it would bog the system down, and it was not a processor problem. It was a bandwidth problem. And again, we've been planning for this for several years. If you notice several of our products that have been out a couple years, they actually have a smaller network connector and so we actually had to throw an adapter in the box for several years, and customers didn't understand why we were doing that. Well, we knew BlueNet was coming, and so we were kind of priming the market. So these products are already BlueNet ready before BlueNet was even a thing. So that's how forward thinking we are when we try to come out with new products and new strategies.
Given what you just said about BlueNet being on sensors for some time, is it expected that down the road, sensors like radar, sonar will plug directly into the MFD via BlueNet, or is it going to still plug into some sort of a network arrangement?
So absolutely. So it can go directly when you need to expand the system past one display. That's when you really have to have the BlueNet switch. And then in order to get a little bit more technical and complicated, if you have a legacy system, let's say you have an 8616, and so you put it on the bridge or something, and the rest of it's all 9000s, then we also have a gateway. And so that acts as a kind of, literally a gateway between the old architecture and the new. So we tried to accommodate everything, because not a lot of, unless it's a new build, there are people that want to upgrade their system that may not rip everything off and start over. They may have certain displays that they want to keep. So certain radars that are not BlueNet ready, some sonar boxes, So we want to make sure the customer didn't have to start from scratch. If they want to go to a 9,000 display, they can use their legacy products using the gateway.
If someone takes a BlueNet radar and plugs it into the 9000 series, will they see an improvement in the radar's performance over the more traditional way of networking?
Not today. I mean, again, it's the bandwidth is not really stretched too thin unless there could be some systems that are maxing it out, but it'd be pretty rare. I mean, we've got boats with 9 or 10 displays on there, and the system still handles it. But as we get more complex and more cameras and more what we call one helm partners that work through the system, that's really when the system gets taxed. So again, we weren't to a max capacity today. We just want to make sure we didn't get to that spot.
So, without thinking about things that are coming in the future, what kind of data is commonly traveling over a BlueNet network right now? Is it pretty similar to what would have been traveling on the previous generation network?
It is. It's just very similar. And then just again, we've to hammer on video. That's going to be the really big driver in the future.
So earlier in our talk, you mentioned that BlueNet's going to deliver the kind of speed, bandwidth capability to deliver, say, maybe camera footage from one camera across a network series of displays. Is that correct? Did I understand that properly?
Absolutely. And so we can do that today, but it's kind of limited. It's limited in resolution. And then you take that further. So imagine you want to watch Netflix in 4K, you can do it on every display on the boat. You can't do that unless you have the 9000 and BlueNet system. And I could be wrong, but I don't think you can do that with any other manufacturer today.
Let's talk for a second about Garmin's surround view camera system. If someone has a GPSMAP 9000 series MFD, are they able to get any extra capabilities or benefits out of that system versus an 8600 or previous generation MFD?
Just resolution.
And obviously, autonomous navigation is a big buzzword. We're hearing a lot about that these days. And those systems, they typically require a series of cameras as well as LiDAR feeds and different networked instrumentation. Understanding that Garmin doesn't have this system today, is this the ground infrastructure that would potentially enable something like that a few years down the road, maybe?
Yeah, understanding the way of the world with AI and how things are, the expectation of the customer, then it's safe to assume that this is going to come at some point. So yes, the BlueNet system should be capable of handling any of that if and when it's available.
Aside from future proofing, are there any other advantages of BlueNet that boaters can enjoy today?
Connectivity. Unless you have a legacy system, it's super simple. It gets a little more technical and complicated if there's a legacy system, but that's in order to make sure it's done properly. We suggest you go through an authorized dealer or technical dealer for that. But again, it can be done at the customer level. But again, we prefer a system like that go through a dealer. But again, it's super simple to plug in. Just if you're familiar with network cables, which most of us are, it's that easy. There are a few other steps in software that takes a little more time than a traditional system like the 8600 has to do with IP addresses and stuff like that. But it's easy enough the average person can do it. But since the system is more complex, it does require a couple more steps in setting it up.
So let's just jump for a second from utilitarian to entertainment. You mentioned the HDCP earlier, high definition digital content protection distribution. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that allows customers to do?
Yeah, so let's talk about protected content. So if you have a DVD player, a lot of times you're not allowed to share that over multiple systems, and it's due to copyright laws. And so the BlueNet system 9000 has HDCP licensing in it or whatever, and the bandwidth to do it. So you can, like I mentioned earlier, through YouTube, or if you have a DVD player, you can play it in one screen for the kids, or you can play it through the whole boat and through an entertainment system. So that's what that does, is allows protected content, mostly videos, DVDs of that nature, to be spread throughout the entire net.
That sounds like a crowd pleaser. I'm just going to take a guess at that one. So the next thing I've sort of been pondering, low Earth orbit satellites networks like Starlink or OneWeb have recently been coming online, and there are more coming online next year as well. Does BlueNet open up anything, for sort of back-end data reporting? And is there anything with LEO connectivity that BlueNet's going to be able to afford for boaters?
Telematics has been a buzzword for a while. And, we have the Garmin on deck system. And so what it'll allow us to do, part of the problem is you lose cellular signal pretty close. So I think what that's going to open up is going to be affordable sat communications for the average boater. And so that's going to make things like On Deck and some of these other telematics companies, it's going to make it a lot more useful for not only the manufacturers, the customer, the engine manufacturers, everybody involved to collect that data and disperse it. And so, yeah, obviously the more data you have coming in through a network, the more it's going to tax it. So the BlueNet system and the 9000 theoretically should be able to handle any, and like I said earlier, any and everything you throw at it.
Sort of wrapping up here, is there anything else about the new 9000 series glass or the BlueNet networks that you'd like to add for the record here that I haven't asked you about?
No, it's you guys, you've nailed the highlights of it. Again, we don't, the BlueNet is not the sexy part of the display. It's not the 27-inch, it's not 4K, but it really is the groundbreaking technology that makes it special. And again, we want to continue to push the envelope and give the customers what they expect from Garmin and have the best technology available.
Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate your time today. This has been great. And please stay tuned for more great content.